Welcome back to Light the Fuse, your, let's see, what is it now? 6 months running celebration of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. No, it's not that much, but we are loving our Ghost Protocol anniversary, aren't we, Charles?
Yeah, I wish it was 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Why not? It demands that kind of attention, and this is kind of the centerpiece, I feel like, of our celebration. Would you say that?
Absolutely, yes. And I think we also had a little bit of confusion about when the release date was. It looks like December 7th, 2011 was the Dubai International Film Festival. December 16th was in the United States, but I don't know if that was when the IMAX was, and then a week later it went.
I think that was the wide release.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think we saw it on the 11th, I believe, or somewhere around there.
Yeah. All right. So this is the one. This is definitely the centerpiece of our anniversary celebration. We got the screenwriters of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. This was a huge thrill for us. This is just an awesome chat.
Yeah, we were surprised at how psyched they were, because we were like, well, you know, they're on Cowboy Bebop right now. I think one of them is on set, one of them is back here. We said, oh man, there's no way they're going to be able to do this, but they jumped at the chance, and they were super generous with their time. They had a lot of great stories, and we really get into the nitty gritty of where this movie came from and what role they had during production. So, you know, I'm sure you've read 1,000 things about how this movie was put together, but now you're going to know firsthand how it was. So I'm really excited to get that story out there.
Yeah, me too. And just because it's the anniversary celebration, I wanted to bring this up. We're too late for Halloween, but for next year, you can make your own Ethan Hunt climbing the Burj costume. I shared this with you, right? I sent it to you. Someone put together kind of a makeshift costume of Ethan Hunt, and they told you where you can buy all the different elements, and then, you know, from different links, and you can put them together to create this costume. We'll link it in our show notes for this week's episode, but I just thought it was worth bringing up because, hey, you know what? Maybe not even Halloween. Why don't you just dress up for the 10th anniversary? Dress up as Ethan Hunt at the Burj.
Yeah, good luck getting those goggles, though, after you've listened to our our interview with Chris Peck.
Yeah.
That is, those are one of a kind.
The goggles in this little makeshift costume are not the greatest, but they work.
They work.
They're good enough.
Okay. Anything else to go over before we get into this? Because it's a pretty meaty episode. I want to kind of jump into it. Okay, well, let's just give a shout out to Jeremy Dillon and his awesome podcast, My Favorite Album. And Jeremy recently did this amazing kind of oral documentary about the creation of David Byrne's American Utopia stage show. So I cannot recommend that enough. You and I are going to be on the show soon again. And we also have a couple of episodes, or an episode that we have banked that hasn't run yet. So please, if you like this show, check out Jeremy's awesome podcast, and there will be a lot of crossover there. And then also John B. Want to thank him for supporting us for, God, I feel like years at this point. Without them, we couldn't do this show. So I guess without further ado, let's jump into it, Charles, and then we'll be back afterwards. Well, thank you guys both for being on the show. We are huge fans, and it has been a goal of ours to get you on. So we are so excited to have you on, and so thrilled that you weren't like, no, please stop bothering us. So thank you on both counts.
No, thank you for having us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
For the 10th anniversary, too. I mean, this is amazing.
That's crazy. I was going to ask, like, how long has it been? Yeah.
That's insane.
Well, do you remember getting the job? What are your first memories of this?
I have a very vivid memory because I think I took the first call, which was, we had worked with JJ on Alias for several years and had a really great relationship with him. He was the best. But after that, we went off and did a couple shows at ABC. We hadn't really worked together. We were writing some, movies on our own, and we were doing a show at ABC that no one's ever heard of and nobody liked. And I was in the writer's room, and and JJ called, and it had been like, probably a year and a half since we had spoken to him. And he's like, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? I'm like, oh, we're working on this show. And what are you up to? He's like, so Tom and I are gearing up to do the next Mission Impossible, and we want you guys to write it. And are you guys free to come and have lunch with us next Tuesday? And it was like, hold on, let me look through my calendar. Yes, we're able to come and talk next Tuesday. Yeah.
Clearly, you took this TV show very seriously. You knew it was going to be the next.
Yeah, we're like, later,
right.
guys. Yeah. Exactly.
We called ABC. We were like, we know you guys are about to cancel the show. We're going to cancel the show for you.
It was nuts. And literally the next Tuesday we walked. It was right. Our offices on the show were right across the street from Paramount. We walked across the street, sat down at Paramount with JJ and Tom, who we had only seen once before in the Alias offices. He couldn't have been cooler. The only thing we really bought to the meeting, because they had the underlying concept that Ethan Hunt has been in prison, and it's sort of him emerging from prison after having spent years. And that was kind of, they knew the starting point they wanted. But I remember Dre brought in some imagery of that car park from the end of the film, that the real version of that. Where was it from?
I'd say somewhere in Germany. It was some sort of like auto dealership had put together this like high-tech remote controlled, like driver-free cylindrical parking garage. And so we were like, this is kind of cool. We should this is a cool setting for an action sequence. And it was like literally the one piece that we brought in.
Right.
Because we didn't know what they were going to, they said they had an idea, so we didn't want to come up with too much information, too much to pitch. But Dre had this great image. They pitched their idea, which we loved. We showed them this image, which they loved. We had a great meeting. And then JJ was like, cool, we're going to call your agent and get into the deal. And it was like, this is insane. It was really, it was insane. And that began this multi-year journey that was incredible. And it was like, next thing we know, we're like writing a Mission Impossible movie, which for both of us was a complete, dream come true in a huge way.
So your involvement predates Birds then?
It predates Birds, though, interestingly, from day one, it was one of the first things JJ said. He's like, I want to try to get Brad Bird to direct this movie. And we're like, Brad Bird's never going to, he's not going to direct this movie. Is he really going to ever direct this movie? And it was always in JJ's mind. And obviously Tom loved the idea, and sort of Dre could elaborate, but, some of how we crafted it and some of the tone that we were going for was hopefully to kind of lean into, Brad Bird's kind of sensibilities in some ways. But yeah, we wrote the script, and then somewhere along that journey, Bird came on, and it was amazing.
Wow.
Was there ever another director that was ever floated at all when you were on the project?
I don't really recall that there ever was. I think Brad really was the guy that was kind of like, in an ideal world, Brad Bird, this is like a Brad Bird movie. And then he was really the only, it was kind of like the conversation happened, and the only director we ever sat down with was when they had said, Brad Bird is on the movie, and Brad read the script, and he came in and we sat, and Brad was like, I love this. Let's go make this movie.
Wow. Did he give you his 5 things he wanted to do, his famous list?
That was sort of fascinating. It was like this beautiful thing about Brad. He came in and he really was like, you guys are the architects of this spy story. And I like the architecture of this spy story. And we had all of the action sequences, all the big movie sequences already really blocked out. We knew we were going to the Burj Khalifa. We knew this, we knew that. But Brad came in, as we were talking about it, he had these beautiful pitches for these moments within them that were these full-blown Brad Bird moments. Like, I remember when we were talking about the movable screen inside the Kremlin. And I remember Brad's laugh, because it was very, very early days in our meeting with him. And he was like, you know what we should do? He's like, you know what would be great? He was just like, we should have Benji stick his head right in front of the camera. We got a big giant Benji head on the wall. And it was like, I remember he just started laughing when he pitched it. And it was like, it sounds great. We should do it. And he had some of those really magical moments in each one of those big sequences.
Yes, I'm sorry. Right, it wasn't Dre when he's climbing up the side of the building and Ethan's glove falls off. That was definitely Bird.
We had one of the gloves fail, and then he had this thing where it's like the glove flutters away. He's like, but as he keeps going, I want to see it. as he keeps going like, oh, fuck, there it is, you know. So again, he had these beautiful things that he kept infusing in the movie.
Right.
The other thing that was, I mean, there was so much that was him, you know, in that movie. Obviously, one thing that I remember he was super passionate about was the sandstorm too. I think that sequence, the climb, pieces of it existed when he came in and when the script was written. But I remember the sandstorm was his like, I want to do a car chase through a sandstorm, and that's so we're like, hell yeah, let's go. And he just spent so much time and love, and I'll never forget. Spend so much time and so much love and passion spilt into building that sequence. But I'll never forget being in Dubai in the van with the camera, and he's got the bandana wrapped around him, and the sand is banging everywhere. And I was like, "You happy you came up with this fucking sand sequence?" Because it was such an intense, miserable part of the shoot, and the heat and Dubai and the whole thing. And but yeah. He was incredible.
Well, we're going to get into some specifics of the script because we have broken into the CIA vault at Langley and have actually read, I think, your 12th draft. Is that what it is, Charles? Somewhere around there?
I think it might be.
Wow.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Wow, the 12th draft. I was about to say, you're a few drafts behind.
Yeah. But we had actually heard from somebody that at one point, one of the big ideas for the script, and someone said that it was in a treatment, was like, you would get to to the third act or something, and it would say, and the bad guy is Harrison Ford. Do you guys remember this at all?
By the way, I was just going to say that when you were saying, were there any other directors? There weren't, but the big conversation was that Harrison Ford was going to be the bad guy, for sure. That was a very real conversation, and it was, I believe JJ. Again, I could be remembering this completely wrong. That's good to say. It was a decade ago if I'm remembering it wrong. But I think there were conversations with him. I think he was super game to the concept. And as I remember it, a day came where Tom, just in like the best Tom, just these moments of clarity where he would just like kind of cut to the core of something. He was like, as amazing as it would be to have Harrison be the bad guy in this movie and to have me go against him, he's like, I don't think the world wants to see me and Harrison Ford like beat each other up. Like it was just something about that. And it was like, you know what, you're kind of right. Like if you were in a movie, I'd maybe when you like teamed up together, but I don't know, the idea of you guys like kicking the shit out of each other, I don't know as much, but yeah, right. I'm not remembering this wrong. That wasn't a real thing,
no,
right? Okay.
Right. No, it's just like, it's the same as if like, and you don't want to beat up Tom Hanks either, right? You know, It's just like, there's just certain things you don't want to see.
But that was definitely the initial concept, was that he was going to be the villain in the movie. Yeah.
So were you going to like obscure that more? Was the villain totally sort of contextualized than how he ended up in the movie, or was it just sort of straightforward? He was going to just be the Hendrix character that we sort of know and love now.
I think it was a similar kind of a character. He was going to be American. I can't remember in those early days.
I think the concept of it was that he was kind of going up against the version, a version of Ethan Hunt that had lost his way. That I believe, if like, again, in trying to remember it correct, a lot has happened in 10 years. In trying to remember it 10 years later, I think it really was like, if Ethan Hunt had ever gone dark, this is what it would have looked like. And it was like reining one in that had gone so deep off the rails.
Ghost of Christmas Future, kind of dark Ghost of Christmas Future.
That was the original idea, and was going to kind of be a not a deep dive, but a dive on that character.
Wow. Yeah. How Hendrix ended up is fascinating, but that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
It would have been awesome.
Except for the beating up part.
Yeah, but even when Tom said it, we're like, you're totally right, but it would still be cool to have Harrison Ford as that guy in the movie. But yeah, he was great with moments of clarity like that. I remember too, like in those early days, the bad guy plot was super complicated. It was really interesting, but like we were trying to come up with something that had never been done before. And it was this whole thing about Harrison's character, I guess, trying to unite the BRIC nations against the US, Brazil, Russia, India and China, and setting off these terrorist attacks. And it was this whole very complicated plot, and it felt too complicated. And then we tried to simplify it, and then we tried other things. And one day we were just sitting at Bad Robot, and Tom just turns to JJ, myself, and Andre, and he's like, "Can I just ask you guys something?" We're like, "What?" He's like, "Can't the bad guy just want nukes?" And we're like, "Okay, can it just be nukes?" He's like, "It always works." He's like, "Let's just have it be nukes," and it was like, "Cool, let it be nukes. It does always work." And then it became nukes. It was we loved it. We were like, "He's so right." Nobody's gonna ask any questions.
It was a great moment of like big movie writing clarity, because he had said, imagine you're in Korea watching this movie and reading the subtitles of this plot that's being explained. He was like, and Brad was very good at that, because Brad really approached it from the take all the dialogue away and just tell it with the pictures, right? Just draw it all in frames. And if the story isn't working, forget it.
You'll know. Yeah.
So it was that great thing of like, we got so much more by simplifying the plot. We were very proud of ourselves with this whole Brick Nation plot. We were very clever, but it was such a good moment of like, keep it simple. Like and you'll get more for less.
Right.
Well, are you ready to go down memory lane and dig into this 10-year-old script?
Yeah, I hope there's some things you can tell us about it that we don't know yet.
Well, there are also, before we get into the things that we read in the draft, there's also other things that other people we've interviewed have brought up, such as someone recently told us that the record store that was in Rogue Nation was originally planned for Ghost Protocol. Is that true?
That is true.
That's right. Which is a JJ idea. Credit where it's due. That's probably why it transferred over. That was like, I just remember early on, he's like, "Wouldn't it be great if he wasn't
Yeah.
the record store, the thing," and that was a JJ idea that was in one of the 200 drafts that ended up in Rogue Nation.
Wow.
Okay. And then there was also cargo ships. We've heard multiple things about cargo ships before. There was a beach in India that had a bunch of abandoned cargo ships.
Oh yeah.
So there are a couple of shipwrecking yards in India, and what they do is they will, at high tide, they'll just full steam ahead bring these giant cargo ships and beach them, and then they just literally hand cut them with torches. They'll hand cut pieces of the ships off and salvage them. And so we had seen this very cool image of all of these cargo ships lined up that had sort of been cross-sectioned, right? Like whole pieces of the bow taken away, and you could see into the ships. So we had this very sort of, there was a chase scene that we had written. We were like, we got to use this location. This would be an amazing thing. All these like carved up cargo ships, like side by side, and create a great foot chase through that area where you can actually see into the bowels of the ship, because the whole front of the ship is taken away. But alas, when you get into the realities of productions, things happen. But yeah, wow. there was a fun sequence in there for that.
I think that got pretty far though, right? Before it was sort of abandoned.
Yeah, we held on to that for as long as we could.
Right, we held on to it from our bleeding hands. Yeah.
Was that for the climax? Like, was that going to be the third act, or when was that?
It was, that sequence originally was the lead into the climax.
India, right.
I believe that sequence, there was a piece of information that in the chasing of the MacGuffin, there was information that we were going to get out of that. I think the Indian Palace sequence replaced that sequence.
Okay.
Much more pleasant set to shoot on, the Indian Palace. Right. It would have been to,
it's an interior.
That's a fun scene too, you know? Yeah.
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 Jeremy Renner and some magnets. What could be bad?
Well, we're obsessed with the snow chase.
Yes.
Right.
Snowmobiles.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the snowmobiles. We've talked to so many people about them. We've seen actors in their costumes. We've heard from Chris Peck, who did the props, who said they had white gun holsters and white everything, and we wanted to see the snowmobile chase so badly.
So did we.
We did too. Well, we're delighted with everything that ended up in the film, but we did too. Yeah, that was actually, I remember that was also super. Yeah, I think that was like after, that concept of the car park, I think that was the other like big set piece we brought to the table, because we're like, what hasn't been done in a Mission movie yet is that proper, snow sequence. Bond has done it, but Mission had never done it. And I think, did it start with him? Was like Ethan on a horse in the beginning of that sequence, and then the ice starts to crack and all that stuff. Is that the one you guys read?
I don't know
There
if
was
that's in
not
the
a
version that
horse.
we read.
There's a missile that he sees underneath the water, underneath the ice, which I thought was just a very. I wished I could have seen Brad Bird bring that to life. It seems like such a perfect Brad Bird thing.
We've seen storyboards too.
Yeah,
I think when Josh is thinking about the horse on the ice, I think Josh is thinking back to the early days of us talking about it and being like, a horse on the ice. It's like, maybe not the horse.
Or it wasn't on the ice. It was like coming down the mountain. There was a whole thing I remember at some point where, and again, this was like us riffing with JJ. Maybe it never got into the script, but where you end up on this frozen over, kind of like they just did in No Time to Die. You're on this like frozen over lake, and Ethan's got to get the information from a guy. He takes a cyanide tablet, dies, and then Ethan, this was JJ's idea, Ethan takes his knife, cracks the guy's chest cavity, cuts it open, reaches in and starts pumping his heart and brings him back to life. And the guy's back to life, and he gives him the codes of whatever they, for whatever they were going after at that point. But it was
well, that's interesting because in the draft that we read, that idea gets transferred to Jane doing that to a bad guy.
Right.
Yes, in the train.
Yes.
Which I think they did shoot.
It's sort of not in there, but not. It's in there-ish, but not in there. It's like she does something. You sort of see her do something to the guy. It's obviously not that gruesome, but like.
I think Elswit told us that it looked like she was performing a lewd act on him. Which
only to Elswit did it look like.
I was about to say, right? He's the only one that saw it that way.
I love that he said. That's amazing.
I think isn't that who told us, Strauss?
I think it was Elswit. Actually, I think it might have been Paul Hirsch too, the editor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Paul Hirsch said it didn't work when they put it together in the edit. It started to feel like it was a lewd act.
It was better on the page. One of those that was better on the page.
Yeah.
Better on the page.
It's a very cool idea.
Yeah, we were so super excited about it, but yeah, it's probably why we transferred it to Jane. We were just trying to hold on to it any way we could, but yeah.
The snowmobiles were fun to see Benji in action would have been the first time we see Benji in the field. Would have been in a snowmobile, like that would have been really cool to see.
I know, but that was another. I mean, it kind of when first signing on, that was one of the mandates as well. Was like because he had done 3 with with JJ, and JJ's like, Simon Pegg's gonna come back, and we really want to like make him part of the team in the field and the whole thing. And that was like obviously being huge fans of his, that was an incredible kind of bonus to know that we're gonna get to bring him to life. It's so cool that he's still rocking and rolling in the franchise.
Yeah. Oh, and then also Chris Peck told us that Brad Bird was thinking about doing the Indiana Jones with the Paramount logo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Turning the mountain into the mountain of where the snow sequence is happening. Is that right? Do you recall this?
I do.
Sure. I think it was definitely in a draft of the script for sure, where we were like, we start on the Paramount logo and we push it, it becomes photoreal. But Dre, do you remember why the mountain sequence went away, or did it just
the snowmobile sequence went away?
Yeah,
I think just once we started really breaking it down, it just felt like I think it got just a little complicated in terms of like the filming and the production calendar of it all, and not knowing exactly which draft we're talking about, because there were drafts in the early days that Ethan wasn't around and it was taking too long to get to Ethan. It felt like when we were like looking at the story, we were like, it's such a big sequence, but it's like coming to a mission movie, man. It's like, I want Ethan Hunt.
Right. It was because the mission in the version you guys read was the mission to get Ethan. Is that or was Ethan part of the snowmobile mission?
Ethan was not part of the snowmobile mission.
That was the problem, right? Which is probably why it didn't end up in the movie. Okay, that answers.
We had a draft where he was a part of it, and then we were like, no, it's better for us. Let's go back to the idea of finding him in the prison. But if he's in the prison, he can't be in the snowmobile sequence. The snowmobile sequence is to get the intel for the prison. But it ended up, again, it was like, I just want to see Ethan Hunt, man.
Right. Well, I think even in the shortened version, then in the edit, they even shortened it more and then told more of the story later when they break Ethan out.
That's right.
That's something Paul Hirsch talked to us about.
That's right.
So like it seemed like they kept having that issue of like, we need to get to Ethan sooner. We need to get to Ethan sooner.
Right.
Can you blame him?
Well, speaking to that, maybe we can divert right now before we get back into specifics, but how much pressure was put on you two to make this sort of a Ethan passing the torch moment, the whole movie?
Honestly, not much, because the real goal on this thing was Ethan as the player coach. What are like the trials and tribulations of being the player coach and like pulling that team together? That's really what we spent most of our time talking about and most of our time really focusing on. Like, what is it? Again, it's I always think of Paul Newman in Slapshot. You know, you're the player coach. Like you got it. You carry a lot on your shoulders, and that's what we kept sort of pushing towards. But not really too much about passing the torch.
Interesting. But he does wind up as the secretary at the end of your draft.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was let's put him in that position since the secretary is dead. And it felt like, is that a place he could be? Sure. But it was an idea, it was a concept, but it was never like the core of this was to like, let's give him his swan song.
Josh looks like he's biting his tongue. But Josh,
no. Honestly, there were so many. It was as in the best possible way. There were so many conversations. Every permutation was discussed and how long would Tom want to do these movies and how long would. But I think it was a conversation along the way, but it was never anything that was. It was something that was discussed, tried maybe in a draft or two, but never was like. I don't think a real consideration that's where it was.
It was never an edict from on high or anything to you.
No, and a lot of it was, you know, in looking at the different mission movies, like, are we building a team? Are we turning sort of like, are we leaning the mission idea into a team idea? Are there going to be more repeat players? Like, there are not a lot of repeat players in the mission movies, right? People come and go, they kind of pop in, but it's never like, you're never into like the team. So a lot of it was about like, let's see if we can build a team, and then let's see how that team functions and how he manages that team. But as Josh said, it was an idea, but it was never the core idea of like, write this movie to make it a passing of the torch. That was never the idea behind it.
Well, speaking of repeat players, Charles, do you want to bring up some things?
Well, but also just quickly about the Paramount of it all. Like we've heard that there was I think maybe one person at Paramount or someone was long gone who was seemingly trying to get Jeremy Renner into taking over the franchise and sort of to push Cruise into that, more advisory role going forward. Was there ever any contact with somebody about that? I mean, were you ever privy to those conversations?
We were always, we had the JJ shield around us for a lot of that stuff. He filtered a lot of that stuff away. Again, I mean, there were so many crazy discussions about all the different permutations of it. I mean, definitely there was conversations about all kinds of versions of it. And Renner had just come off of Hurt Locker. And it's that ridiculous thing where people start to like pontificate as if, they know what Mission Impossible wants, or they know what Mission Impossible needs, and are way overthinking it because it's Tom Cruise from head to toe and let's go. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think there was all kinds of conversations. That was definitely one of them, but and things were maybe tried in the scripts, but it was never, I don't think the core people making the movie ever thought that was ever going to be the reality, including Renner, like, you know what I mean? Or
right.
Or any of them. I think it was always going to be, Tom's world, and we were all playing in it.
It was more like, to Josh's point, kind of like the plot of the BRIC nations being united to take down the rest of the world. Like, let's just keep it simple.
We're overthinking it. You're overthinking it. Exactly.
Yeah, you're overthinking it, guys.
Nukes and Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Like Tom Cruise stopping bad guys from nukes. Does the world need or deserve anything more? Fuck no.
Well, I feel like you guys handle it really well too with the ending, because you don't even full on say he's taking the secretary role. You kind of dangle it in front of him, and then Ethan says they like do a cheers like to possibilities or something like that. And so it's like you do a good job of, I feel like, probably making that person happy who was trying to push it to happen, but also making it like Ethan's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
True that.
Totally.
So the shifting subtitles we love so much, the ones that shift from Russian to English as Ethan is waking up in the hospital, that's in your draft. Do you remember where that came about? We just love that visual, that idea, and where it came from.
I don't know. I'll I'll be totally honest, that was probably a Josh Appelbaum idea.
No, I was going to say I was for some reason it was either you or Brad Bird because I'm not that clever. So I was, or JJ. It was as the least clever guy of the four of us. It was. I don't think it was me, but
I'm gonna own this moment. I'm gonna say I think it was him. I think Josh was like, you know what? I feel like I've never seen like the shifting subtitles for the confusion of the confusion. That's probably how it
was me.
Came about.
Frankly, when you just said it, I was like, we did shifting subtitles from Russian to English in the movie. That's cool.
It's so awesome because you're in Ethan's head as he's waking up. He's dazed. Yeah. You're like, oh, it's in Russian, and then it switches like as he's processing the information and turning it into English. It's so fucking great. We love it so much.
That's awesome.
I'm glad you remember it.
Yeah,
I'm glad you came.
Glad you remember it. At least somebody does. I gotta watch this movie again. I haven't seen it in a decade.
Now's the time. 10 years.
That was good. Yeah.
So part one in the can. Any tidbits you want to briefly go over?
Well, first of all, I got to say you have to come back next week because the very next thing we discuss is Vanessa Redgrave. Max's character was actually a pretty significant role in their draft, and there were more scenes than just the one that the fog is in the final movie. She factors more into the climax. So we talked to them about that. So you have to come back. Just wanted to start by saying that. But as for what we heard this week, I love hearing about Cruise's story instincts.
Yep.
Like simplifying the villain plot and that nobody wants to see him beat the crap out of Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. You know, obviously any details we can get about snowmobile chase.
Oh my God.
Even if they are conflicting reports, we will take those and cherish them.
Yes. We get to discuss it in detail with them. And there was a version with Ethan on a horse and the ice underneath him starts to crack. That sounded so awesome.
Yeah, there's this great moment in their script where the characters look down and see a missile going underneath the ice. That just made me delighted and made me think, they really did, as they said, write this movie with Brad Bird in mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is really cool to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and it explains why it works so well. Also, that whole thing about, all these different nations kind of pitting, he was trying to pit all these nations against each other, and it seemed crazy. We didn't get to read that version, but
yeah. That would be a fascinating exercise to read all the different drafts they did. Probably would take a while, but would be worth it.
Yes.
We also got confirmation that the record store was going to be in Ghost Protocol. And interestingly, it was actually JJ's idea, which totally makes sense. It feels like a JJ idea.
Yeah, it definitely has shades of the 7-Eleven from 3 in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get into some real shit next time. So.
Oh, yeah. But also this week, we heard about the abandoned cargo shipyard sequence in India.
Yes.
Which would have been an epic foot chase.
Yes, it sounded like almost, and this again, I think speaks to the bird of it, is like, I was picturing that maybe there would be like almost a cross section, kind of like in, a Wes Anderson movie or something. And as you watch them running through the different levels of the ship, and yeah, I think that would have been pretty neat. But
yeah,
hey, it can always come back. Listen, what do we learn from this is that a good idea in the Mission Impossible franchise always finds its way into a movie. So who knows?
8, 9, 10, whatever. It'll be in there somewhere down the line, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's about it for this episode. But I just cannot stress enough that you need to come back and hear us talk all about Max. And yeah, we talk about a lot of stuff. I don't want to get too into it, but you just come back because it's worth it for sure.
Yes.
And then I also want to plug our Patreon, of course, patreon.com/LightTheFuse. We recently did a Patreon episode about Jeremy Renner possibly letting it slip that he will be in an upcoming Mission Impossible movie, maybe. It was a weird slip of the tongue that made us wonder, and we, of course, overanalyze it in a Patreon episode. We also did episodes about the Ghostbusters franchise. We did one just recently about underrated Steven Spielberg movies. We did, in light of West Side Story coming out. We did one about the recent profile of Henry Cavill, and we talked about And another episode about some comments that Rebecca Ferguson made recently about MI7 and MI8 that were very intriguing. So you definitely should check out our Patreon, sign up at the bonus content level, and you'll get weekly bonus episodes. I want to give a thank you to Robbie J. Martin. Thank you, Robbie, for making this episode possible. And also want to say that our wonderful music is by Kevin Blumenfeld, and the editing and mixing, which is wonderfully done, by Luke Burson. And everyone should check out our TeePublic store, which is linked from our website. It's LightTheFusePodcast.com. You can go to the merch section. Check out the show notes, too. We got always good stuff in there in the episode guide on our website. And what else, Drew?
Well, they can sign up for our Patreon if they're not already patrons, and that's patreon.com/LightTheFuse. And yeah, just like and subscribe, rate and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Check us out on social media, Light the Fuse Pod. And yeah, keep in touch. Let us know what you want to hear, who you want us to talk to. It always really helps us out. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Come back for part 2. We're going to keep up the celebration.
All right.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. Before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.